Welcome to the Weigh In Podcast, your prescription for a healthier life, where wellness is more than just a number on a scale. We'll dive deep into not just weight loss, but the medical, emotional, and lifestyle aspects of well-being.
In each episode, we'll weigh in on hot topics ranging from diet myths and exercise trends to mental health and chronic disease management, providing you with the evidence-based advice to guide your health decisions. Remember, it's not just about the weight on the scale, but about creating a healthier, more balanced you.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. What's new?
Yesterday, actually went to a networking event. It was a mega mixer of sorts. And so I actually have never been to this chamber event. So it's called Sherman Oaks Chamber. So I live in Culver City, which is LA proper. And then you go over the hill up the 405, and then that's Sherman Oaks. I used to live there, but I wanted to invite my cousin because he's a website designer and he's never been to a networking event. So that was his first event. And it was probably like the biggest one that I've been to. So I probably might have scared him inviting him to this event.
Like, never again. That was terrifying. Poor baby.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was at a brewery with about maybe 100 to 150, I want to assume, because it was like literally 5 chambers all in the San Fernando Valley in one.
So, that's cool. That's a good networking event.
Yeah. So it was a once a year thing, and it was so fun. There was like lots of vendors, especially there was a Filipino vendor, there was a Jamaican vendor, there was acai bowls. So it was super, super cool. And I'd say it was successful because the first people that we met were these they run a photo booth, and so we were taking pictures and stuff. And then yeah, they actually needed their website done. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like my cousin, he can do your website. He did my website.
Yes, and your website's beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. I totally revamped it. So I hope people like it. It has more information about HRT, TRT, women's health, etc. But he needed a photo booth for an event that he's having for his in-laws. It's going to be their 50th wedding anniversary. And so I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. So he invited them and hired them on the spot to like do the event. So yeah, but we've met a lot of cool people there. It was, it's really nice to network. I just really like to get to know other people's businesses and what they offer, and just to get to know them and just see who's in your community. So I had so much fun. Like, it's kind of scary, of course, leading up to it, because I don't really like parties and all that. Like even though I can seem very outgoing at times, like I do like to just be my own little bubble. And like I like smaller communities. I like one-on-one or just like a couple of people. So to be in a big event is kind of like, oh my gosh. So just in case you're like, just in case you're like, oh, you run a podcast and you do all these things, it's like, it's so much different because you're just one-on-one with the camera or with somebody else. But when you're on the spot with all these different people, you're like, oh my God. But everyone's
it's
super
overwhelming,
nice.
Especially when you go solo, because you don't know where to start. You don't know who you talk to first. It's just like, it's weird. It's like being like the new kid in like the lunchroom or something,
Yeah, and I did make that comparison though, but I said it's not like high school. Like, people aren't looking at you funny way. Everyone's going to say hi to you. They're all going to talk to you. So if you are intimidated by going to these events, like, just put yourself out there, get your name out there. If anything, it gets you talking about your business and getting more used to that. So I think it's just a win-win, even though it seems scary at the time. And when you leave, you feel amazing. You're like, oh my God, I talked to all these people. I got all these business cards. I got all my business cards too. So super fun event. So yeah,
that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
I'm proud of you, and I'm so happy for your cousin that he was able to do his first event. That's no small thing.
Yeah, and if you guys are interested, if anyone needs a website, he does everything. It's under pixelmotives.com. So he's really great, really responsive. So check him out. And his name is AJ.
Very, very cool. And you're an awesome cousin for shouting him out. I feel like until you own a small business, you don't realize just how helpful even doing small things like mentioning somebody's name, sharing their post, commenting on their post to get them a little bit of engagement. Like, any of those things are just like, you have no idea. It has like such a huge impact. So
Yeah. And it
Kudos
just
to
feels
you.
good. It's like, oh, someone's actually watching what I just did.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah. Well,
Because,
how
yeah,
about
it's
you, my
hard.
friend? You've been posting a lot yourself on social media and you've been talking a lot about your metabolic health. So, yeah, what's
Yeah,
new with that?
I have been posting a lot lately. I'm kind of bringing it all back. So I used to be like, I don't want to use the word influencer, but I used to be very active on social media around COVID time when I lost weight and I gained a ton of followers. And then life got ahead of me. And social media is really hard, you guys, as you know. So it became harder
Mm.
and harder for me to kind of keep up with. So it's almost like I've been on like a temporary hiatus and I'm kind of like coming back and this time forcing myself to also embrace TikTok
Yeah.
despite my like aversion to it just because it's like so new and confusing for me. But yeah, so I've been posting a lot more. Lifefire's always kind of been all about metabolic health. And so it's been fun to really start to be able to push it more now that we kind of have like all the tools in the tool shed. Like we have tons of biohacking stuff in our office. We have all the things. So now it's cool because, as you know, I love protocols and now I can give my clients protocols that are effective because we have those tools. So it's been fun to be able to post little tidbits on social media and it's been fun to offer new services that emphasize that. We have a new service that's going to be, we have Reburn right now, which is our metabolic health, but like not even that, it's really a metabolism reset. So we have that happening, and then very soon we'll be launching Lifefire Evolution, and that is sort of our concierge women's only program. And so there'll be more to come on that, but I'm very excited about the new programs, like I said, because they really focus on um, overall like health span and well span, like really on the whole patient. So yeah, that's what I got going on.
Awesome.
The
Yeah.
weather here has been wild for zero reason. There was this storm. There was like I don't even understand. Like I thought it was going to be a regular rainstorm, and if you live in Havertown, you know what storm I'm talking about. There was no like crazy strike. I mean, I heard there was a little storm, but I didn't know it was going to be crazy, and it resulted in lots of power outages all over this area. And my neighbor's tree fell in my yard, destroyed our playground, destroyed our basketball hoop,
Oh,
is taking up like our whole yard. It's like on a power line. So it's been like a weird, chaotic past several days with lots of like interruptions in power, but you know, it is what it is. I'm
oh my
grateful that we
gosh.
didn't have any like damage to our home, you know.
Yeah, or that like that your kids weren't out there,
A
imagine.
million percent.
Oh,
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Yeah, a million percent. So yeah.
terrifying.
So yeah, it is terrifying. I couldn't live somewhere like Florida where y'all get hurricanes all the time. I wouldn't last because this little storm was stressful enough. So for those of
Yeah.
you that live in areas that have natural disasters happen a lot, I salute you because I cannot, man.
Yeah, that's why I pay the higher taxes to live here in California because we don't have any of those. Like, I mean, granted, yes, the fires from the high winds kind of sucked, but otherwise, we don't get that a lot. So, yeah.
That's like, and I need to come visit you in Cali as an aside.
Yes. And I also need to visit you as well in
Yes, you do.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we definitely need to plan a trip. It'll make sense because our bestie Emily is also from where I'm from. So we'll
Yeah.
have to plan a trip for you at some point so you can come hang with us.
Yeah. Mainly because I want to visit your clinic and do all the red light therapy and
Yes,
that
yes,
vibrating thing that you do or whatever.
yes. The vibe. Yep. It's so funny. The last time Emily flew, because Emily lives in Colorado. The last time she flew home, like as soon as she got on the plane, she was like, "Yo, I'm gonna come by, and I'm bringing my mom with me." And they did like a whole session. It was super cute.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, well, this episode we're going to touch more on biohacking. So, in case you're like, what the hell are you guys talking about? We're going to go into more detail with Patrick. So excited.
Cool. Yeah,
All
no, this is
right.
gonna be an awesome episode.
Yeah. So, today's episode, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Patrick Stracuzzi. He is the founder of Stracuzzi Wellness, an integrative health clinic based in Kingston, New York, but treats via medicine in 35 states. There are multiple providers that have joined him at his clinic. The practice focuses on long term health optimization through personalized protocols that combine hormone therapy, peptide treatments, weight loss medications, and advanced biohacking tools. The clinic works with men and women, particularly those in their 20s and their 70s who want to improve their energy, body composition, mental clarity, and overall vitality. Their mission is to help people not just feel better, but perform at the highest level physically, mentally, and metabolically. So, welcome, Patrick. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. Super excited.
And before we
Yeah.
even start, Zarina and I owe you a huge thank you because we first saw you at the Vegas sort of what was like the Vegas conference that we went to. Full disclosure, Zarina's a terrible example on me, and she kept making me leave to go drink during some of the lectures. But we were fully present for your biohacking
We were
lecture,
locked
and
in.
we were locked in.
Yeah.
Might have been the last
Yeah,
one of
that
the
was
day
a
that we were present for, and it was really good, and it really inspired and motivated me, and it's actually why I offer some biohacking tools in my office. So I really just want to say thank you because we've admired you from afar for a while. It's really exciting for us to
Yes.
have you on here.
Absolutely. Well, it's my pleasure, and I think that all of us deep down inside are biohackers. We just kind of don't know it yet. But yeah, it's super
Mm-hmm.
exciting. That was a really fun conference, and the following year was a good conference to speak at too. But the Vegas one was probably my favorite, and I'll be speaking at it
It
again
was
in
fun.
October. So yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
cool.
amazing. So, Patrick, can you share your journey and what inspired you to start Stracuzzi Wellness?
Yeah, so I mean, I always tell our patients, it's a personal journey for me. I've had low testosterone for, a decade now, actually over a decade. But many years ago, when I was in my early 20s, my wife laughs and doesn't really, care that I share this story now. But when me and my now wife first started dating, I was a nurse and a nurse practitioner, and we were dating for a while, and life was good. We had no kids, and I don't know, probably about 4 or 5 6 months after we started living together, I just kind of started to feel like a shell of myself. I had like no energy, no motivation, and I just felt like kind of depressed for no reason. My wife, I always joke around and tell the story. I was the mayor of the friend zone. I chased my wife for like a year and a half. We were really good friends. The moment I saw her, I told her, I was going to marry her. Like even when we were just friends, all my friends thought I was crazy. So I just knew that there was something off. And in the traditional medical model, I ordered labs on myself, and I was just like a mess, and I'm someone that's always been very active. I was I always say an athlete, but a wannabe athlete. I was an amateur boxer and almost went professional. I played basketball. Like, I was always very active. I was in the military, and I just knew that something was off. So I ended up having like really, really, really low testosterone, like critically low. And I went to my primary, and my primary is cool. He's old school. He talks to me like I talk to all of my patients, it was very like matter of fact. And he basically told me straight up, he was like, I don't know why, your testosterone is as low as he is. And, you guys know, and I think a lot of people understanding that, the traditional medical model just isn't the way to get long-term optimal health. So I had to see multiple specialists, endocrinologists, 4 or 5 different urologists, and like no one could figure out what was causing my issues. I had the testosterone of like a
Wow.
90-year-old woman, and basically my insurance wouldn't cover testosterone for me, which is like the same spiel that men and women get today, still, 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I always had a desire and an urge to start my own clinic. Ever since I was, a teenager, I always wanted to, like, be in charge of my own destiny kind of a thing. And when I originally was going to open my clinic, which has been in the works since like 2008, 17, 18, I was going to do like, direct primary care and, just really, try and help. But I really, after seeing what I had to go through, I shifted my focus to really try and help people that were in my position. So, that's
Mm.
why we operate outside of the insurance-based model. And we really do try to help people as much as we can. So, it's been like a personal, a testament. I tell everyone, in today's world, you can make money doing anything with technology. And if you hustle hard enough, I do consider myself privileged that I get to be in charge of my own destiny and have a career and a niche in my career where I actually enjoy it. So it's like a, true passion of mine.
Wow. And Patrick, how old were you when this all happened, when you
So I'm
realized you had low testosterone?
37 now, so probably 26.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think it's
Wow.
been going on even before then because I had spells here, even before then. I mean, my backstory is that, I've been a nurse since 2009, 2010, and I've always, been a hustler. I've never worked less than probably 60 or 70 hours. So I probably just like burned myself out between that and like stress from the military. I've just been always on the go. And, I've always been like a naturally skinny guy. I'm like 6 foot, 195 pounds now. And before testosterone, before optimizing my health, I was like 6 foot, 160 pounds. And I had a dad bod before I had kids. I just like the skinny arms, chubby belly, and just like, no motivation, living on,
Mhm.
stimulants, caffeine, and, just to get through the day kind of a thing.
Yeah, like classic low T patient.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what your
It's
description
so
is.
it's
And it can
yeah,
happen at any age. I think people have a misconception that low T can happen when you're older, but it can definitely happen when you're in your 20s. And it's kind of the downside when you're so young, because people are assuming, like, why are you so tired? Like, you're in your 20s. You need
yeah,
to be doing all the things, going out and have energy. And it's like, well, I'm not feeling that way. And they just brush you off because of your age, too. So
yeah.
it's
What's
really
it?
Yep.
sad.
What's the term that the young people use? Gaslit. Like they're getting
Oh yeah, they
Yes.
gaslit.
love to use gaslighting.
Yeah,
Yep.
and
Traumatized.
the,
Yeah.
Oh my
the
gosh, the level of
the
drama.
sad part is that I look back when I was in primary care and working for the hospital system and like primary care on the side, and it was basically what we were told. Like, oh yeah, if you have a guy that's under the age of like 40 and they're coming in asking about low testosterone, they're just looking to do steroids, and it's just like
Yep.
Yeah. Trying to
you
be a
know
bodybuilder.
yeah, very
Yep.
few people seek care, and this is men and women, but especially men. I joke around and say, like, men, we like to suffer in silence, right? Where we, you know, that's why like a lot of men, they're isolated and depressed because they either have kids or they're young and they're trying to provide for themselves and to have a family or a family. And the dopamine hit that you get of being young and kind of goes away, and now you're just like basically you have responsibilities. So a lot of men, they basically are afraid to reach for help, and by the time they come to a clinician and they're asking for help, the worst thing that we do is kind of push them away and say, oh yeah, no, testosterone isn't, hormones aren't the cause of your problem. And honestly, it's sad. It's the same thing with women too. I mean, you guys probably see it in
Mm-hmm.
your clinic. We treat women as well. And I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I have we have women that say, oh, my OBGYN or my primary said that, it can't be hormones, it's just natural. It's like, we just done a disservice as a medical society. It's like hormones are natural in our body, and to say that as they decline, it's not the cause of many chronic issues and symptoms. Instead, we throw a antidepressant or something else on them to help them cope. And it's like, again, I get a lot of heat from this from other providers. At that conference that we spoke at, I got a lot of I got yelled at by a lot of providers, and it kind of
Mm.
was misconstrued. I'm not antidepressant. I'm not anti psychiatry. Like, I work very closely with a lot of them, and a few of the clinicians that work with me in my practice are certified in psychiatric nurse practitioners as well. So it's and that's changing too, right? There's integrative psychiatry now that are actually looking at
Yep.
hormones. So it's just been a
Yeah, I definitely think mental health has a space, but if you're disregarding hormones completely, you're not even giving it a chance. That's a whole
yeah,
different discussion. But it's not
Plus,
like
I
we're
can't tell
saying,
you how many people I've had that go on hormone therapy and then find that they're going back to their psychiatrist and they're getting weaned down off of some of these drugs because they're
mhm.
feeling so much better. So,
yeah. I mean, we've done it at our clinic with probably like 10 to 15% of our patients. Men are a little bit easier to accept and wean off because of the sexual side effects that happen from antidepressants. But a lot of
mm,
women as well too. Especially women that are with kids that are getting older. Because listen, I got a soon to be 8-year-old daughter and a soon to be 5-year-old son, and I mean, to tell a woman, okay, hormones are really the issue. I want to take you off of your Zoloft or Prozac or something that's helped stabilize their mood when their kid is really young, and if they're the primary caretaker, like, I'm not going to say it's not challenging. You get the patient to buy in, and then all of a sudden, they have an issue where their anxiety is coming back a little bit or the depression's coming back. That's the
right.
easiest way to have that patient yell at you and say, what the hell, so it is an adjustment, but we've done it. And it's something that it's kind of rewarding. Like, it's definitely something that I look forward to in clinical practice.
And so, how would you say that you guys approach wellness overall compared to like a PCP, right? Like I come to you guys and I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling like not that motivated. What do you feel like is the difference between going to your clinic and going to your standard, like run of the mill primary care provider?
Yeah, so we try to do a root cause approach. I like to say, we're not fully blown functional medicine. We're like kind of like integrated where we do it both. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where, if you have a cut, if you're bleeding out of your arm, I'm not going to tell you to go, take some an herb to cut it off. Like obviously we're going to address the issue, but now we really do try to look at it as from like a whole person perspective, right? So like that's why we do a comprehensive lab evaluation. But we look at it more in depth. I mean, we're looking at everything from vitamins, nutrients, your overall metabolism. Because when you look down and you look at the studies and the data, a lot of these common but undertreated conditions do contribute to a lot of mental health issues and a lot of hormone issues, like low ferritin and nutrients not being optimized. And I tell everyone, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you come to you're evaluated by us, and your testosterone is non-existent, or if you're a woman, your progesterone and testosterone is non-existent. I'm not going to say, okay, just go on my full script dispensary and buy some ferritin biglycinate. Like obviously, like we have to address everything all at once, but we really do try to take into account like your lifestyle, and a lot of our patients are either in like civil service, or they're blue collars, they're blue collar workers, a
Right.
lot of them. So the we try to meet people where they're at, and really emphasize like long-term health. And my spiel is, it did not take you 2 months to either become overweight or to have low energy. Like it's a long thing, so it is going to take a little bit of work on their end, but we really do try to get back to the basics and like, okay, like what are you eating every day? Like, how much how are you sleeping? And like when it comes to like hormones and stuff, it really is like a long-term continuous like approach. So, there is like a disconnect. I always tell this story. When I was in school, I followed this. I mean, he was like one of the top rated doctors across the country for like primary care. And he was actually double certified in surgery too. So he was a surgeon, but he had like a little holistic practice on the side. And I followed him one day and I was like, this guy, the way he speaks, not in patients, like I can't even keep up with him as far as like the top medical terms at the time. Like he uses all this fancy language, and then he would come into a patient's room and I was like, it's like two different people. Like he was breaking down and just speaking so simply and matter of fact. And so when we left the room, I was like, why did you basically speak like so slow and plain, to this person? He was like, well, the first thing is that I could tell them exactly what's causing his issue, and I could prescribe him this, $500 a month medicine that will probably cure it. But at the end of the day, they're going to leave the office and they're going to forget 90% of it. And either their insurance
Mm.
is going to cover it or they're not going to be able to afford it. And he's like, you just have to meet people where they're at and take into account that not everyone can afford most of these medications. And I mean, this guy was like the top rated doctor in New York at the time. And we as well as you guys know as well as I do, he had all these insurance based guidelines. I mean, this person's blood pressure was through the roof. Like according to the guidelines, he should have been started on a statin and three different blood pressure medications. Like right
Mm.
there, he was a black patient that had like advanced kidney disease on his, like basically he should have been like given the gamut, like the whole shabil, 5 to 6 prescription medications. And he was like, he's not going to take half of these. I'm basically wasting my pen and paper. And that was like a clicking moment where I was like, you know what, this is why this guy charges dirt cheap. He's like he was charging like $100 a visit or something like that. And didn't do it for the money. And it was just like, that was just like a real eye opener where you could be the smartest person in the world. You could be, the Andrew Hubermans and all these, top rated
Mhm.
people that speak on their podcast. And it's like, it's not going to connect. That patient's still going to leave the office and go back to their life and not really meet you where you're at.
That's super commendable. And I think it's a shame for primary care. I mean, it's hard. I know you have to deal with insurance and you have to do things a certain way, but that's why
Yeah,
we have our own clinics. And it's nice to
yeah,
have that freedom to be able to get to
Exactly.
do what we want, spend the time with the patient, really get to educate them. Cause like these providers only have 15 minutes sometimes to see like
yeah.
30 patients a day
Yep.
in an
That's what I was
8 hour
going to say.
shift.
A lot of this isn't even the providers. It's the system that it's our healthcare system. It's like what we've been provided with. Like they have 10 minutes to see these patients. Insurance is awful, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
And if it's a good provider, when they go over, if they have a good office manager, and when I say good, I mean good office manager for the large medical system that they work for, they're
Mm-hmm.
basically banging on the door when you're at like 12 minutes. Like, oh, you only got, like
Yep.
you're getting harassed. It's like, what
Yep.
I always joke around. It's like, what the hell are we, in a helping profession for? Like, who are we helping? It's really criminal. What we
It
do
really
in
is.
the traditional medical model.
Absolutely. So, changing gears, I wanted to get more specific in the services that you offer. So, I wanted to ask specifically, what is TRT and why is it beneficial for men?
So yeah, TRT or HRT, hormone replacement therapy, for men, and we also treat women as well. But for men, you know, it is. How can I say this? So I talked to a couple of other colleagues of mine that own clinics, and we all kind of agree. I really think that the whole name, or like the whole label of like TRT, is kind of a misnomer, right? So like when we say TRT, everyone assumes testosterone replacement therapy, and they think that it is just treating low testosterone in men. And don't get me wrong, when you look at a lab and you see that their testosterone is low, obviously that's what you're treating. And if you're doing the insurance-based guidelines, you would use a diagnosis code to justify getting paid if you're accepting insurance. But I think that when we say a person's on TRT, and like if they go to their primary and or any other provider and they say, oh, you're being treated just for low testosterone, it's really not really encompassing or capturing really what we're doing, in this
Mm-hmm.
space. Because you know testosterone replacement therapy, it's so beneficial, not just of getting your testosterone the optimal level, but what it does to the body as far as improving your cognition, as far as brain fog, low memory, improving your memory, improving your motivation. And I think that it should be like relabeled as like metabolic enhancement therapy or whatever. I said a fancier term on another podcast I was on, or another discussion, but because I
Mm-hmm.
think that what it's really doing is helping prevent and reverse, people's very poor metabolism, and improving and like getting people off of a lot of their medications. I mean, I've weaned probably close to 1,000 men off of hypertensive, blood pressure
Wow.
medications. We've gotten people off of statins,
Wow.
antidepressants. So I mean, I said this in a video on my social media page, but if there was one treatment that I would give patients, men and women, to help, get them off of pre-diabetic medication, diabetic, type 2 diabetic medication, blood pressure medication, improve their, sex life and overall motivation. And I call it mental resilience, not just depression, but the ability to tolerate stressful situations. It would be hormone replacement therapy for both men and women. I mean, there's very few either pharmaceutical or hormonal or supplements that really can cure or and improve like multiple aspects of health. There's really not many that do that besides hormone replacement therapy. And there is a stigma with it still to this day. It's becoming more common, right? There's clinics opening up, left and right, doing it, because I like to think at least that we're all doing it for the right reasons, in the altruistic, helping people space. But you guys know as well as I do, in anything, there's always going to be people that are doing it for the wrong reason. So there still is a stigma. Just this morning I had a call with a patient that their primary wanted them to come off of testosterone, and it was because they checked his testosterone level, and his testosterone was quote unquote too high. It was like in the 700s, even though he just started
Oh.
testosterone and he wasn't even optimized yet. And the
Mm-hmm.
guy was feeling amazing. He was down, 15 pounds in like 6 weeks, and had the motivation, of a 25-year-old again. It improved. His marriage is improving. He just feels great. But that's a topic for a whole nother podcast. But yeah, it's unfortunately it's changing, but in medicine, it's you still have the human factor where there are still going to be clinicians that are resistant to change. So yeah,
Yeah, I think there's a kind of like doctors feel like they need to chase numbers at times, and
yeah,
it's really a shame because, like you said, the patient's feeling great and they're
yep,
scared of this testosterone of 700. And to listeners that aren't aware of like free T levels, like you can go up to the typical range is usually 900 to maybe 1400 or so.
yep,
So 700 is like you could still go more,
yeah,
really.
yeah. I mean, we shoot for
Um,
like a total testosterone, like as long as there's no side effects, you're not having any issue
yeah.
with your blood pressure or anything like that. We shoot, for most men anywhere in like the 850 to like 1400 range for your total testosterone. Free
Hmm.
testosterone of anywhere from like 35 to 45. So
Hmm.
there's so many different ways. And again, it's one of those things where obviously the symptoms are first, then the labs are second. We've had some patients that don't like how they feel, when their free testosterone gets above a certain level. So it's one of those things where, you have a lab marker, you have symptoms, you have guidelines, which we just take those and just scrap those out the window because they were written, probably 30 to 40 years ago, and I think we have a better chance of a cyborg coming and running the world before the insurance-based guidelines catch up to where it's
And
actually,
I believe it with the way
yeah,
things are
Hmm.
happening. It could be possible.
yeah, and it's unfortunate, you know what I mean. I don't ever want people to think that like we're going against the grain with everything, but it's just
Right.
like by the time true change happens, as far as like the guidelines meeting what we see in clinical practice and where it should be, it's just at
It's
that point it'll
molasses.
be decades from now, and it's already been 20 to 30 years too long for both men and women for their hormones being addressed and actually taken seriously.
I'm a patient and I'm coming to you guys and I'm saying like, "Oh man, like I'm feeling awful, but I don't want to do HRT because of all the stigma surrounding it. I've heard that, I don't know. I've heard that it can make my balls shrink. I heard that, my primary says it's bad for me. What would you say to me?"
So, I tell everyone, I don't ever want a patient to feel like coming to us is going to ruin their relationship with their primary care, right? We have some patients that have great primary care clinicians, and we actually work pretty close with a lot of the ones, especially locally to our clinic and across New York and a few down in Florida. They're pretty good and actually refer a lot of patients to us because they see the benefit in their patients. So I don't want to say as a whole that
Sure.
primary care, is bad. But, I tell everyone I had a flat tire, I would never go to my veterinarian and ask their recommendations, right? So, unfortunately in primary care, the goal is to basically be a great triager, catch illness and disease, or at least what it was supposed to be. It's, you're supposed to be very well rounded, be able to address multiple things, and basically advocate
Hmm.
for your patients and refer them to specialists that you think they should go to. Unfortunately, like we talked about in the insurance based, model of primary care, it's just not something that they are familiar with. And when I did primary care, not once did anyone come and give us like a lecture in the practices that I work with about hormones. Not once did they talk about anything like that. It was one of those things where if it was anything outside your realm, you refer it out, and I worked for a local group that was they're probably one of the best primary care clinicians locally. They're like privately owned. They fought off the big corporate, and still even in that scenario, they were like, this is not what we are no on, refer them to the endocrinologist that we work with at our clinic. And it's one of those things where you, if you don't see it every day, if you don't eat, sleep, poop, pee it, and breathe it, like,
Yep.
So
hormones,
true.
it's
Very true.
very easy to make someone feel like crap on hormones. It's very hard to master where you feel comfortably treating multiple patients. So, I don't expect primary care clinicians to fully understand it. And again, I can understand the other side, the scrutiny towards hormones, so I do understand why some primary care clinicians are like, oh, it's really not safe and things like that, because it's kind of what we're told. from a
Mm-hmm.
standard guideline, but it's just not, it's outdated,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
kind of like,
There's a big bias towards it. And
yeah,
I even remember when I was in nurse practitioner school too, when they taught us about birth control and everything, they're just, oh, well, there's history of blood clots, there's history of
yeah,
stroke. And these are all true, yes. But there also is a difference between what we do, which is bioidentical hormones versus synthetic. And so the
yep,
synthetic ones are the ones that can cause all those issues. And there's been
yeah,
numerous studies and research to show that bioidentical is safe. And so that's the
exactly. And
difference.
that's kind
Yeah.
of what we tell them. It's like, the
Mm-hmm.
study that scared clinicians, probably 15 or 20 years ago now, like it was like one of the worst studies that was ever done in medicine, and I joke
Yep.
around, and I can't take credit because I heard, it's not exactly the same quote, but it's very similar, that if they did that study on men and found that, it was unsafe, and you had to tell a patient, a 30-year-old man, hey, your penis isn't going to ever work the same again, but because your hormones are low, but it's unsafe for hormones, so you just have to go the rest of your life never having a full erection and never being able to satisfy your wife. I think patients would have blown up, multiple, the insurance
Yep.
base and like the medical society. But because of, that study that we're referring to, the Women's Health Initiative, it was done on women. It's been kind of just like the gold standard. Okay, like the hormones are dangerous and safe, and it was like,
Yep.
unsafe, and it was like the worst study that took like the worst category of patients, and half the patients were like well past the time to even start hormones and had all these dangerous metabolic and comorbidities, and it's probably like the perfect example of what should never be done in a clinical study and how it should never be applied to clinical practice. But yeah, it's really scary because there is a difference between what you get at CVS and Walgreens and what these studies show versus
Yep.
like what we're actually doing in like the integrative medicine space.
Yep. And if you're listening right now and you heard him just mention the study, it's really funny because Zarina and I literally in the previous episode just did an episode where we kind of unpack this study. So if you're wondering what he's talking about, it really is sort of a groundbreaking study in the sense that it really ended
Yeah,
up spreading a lot of misinformation. So definitely listen to our previous episode to get kind of the
yeah,
backstory on that.
yeah. It's really sad. Like I said, it's
It is.
and there's been so many other studies that have come out since then for both men and women showing how hormone,
Yep.
not only is it safe, but you're actually doing a disservice to your patients by not starting hormones when indicated versus keeping them. I mean, especially, testosterone, like you have a better chance of dying from a heart attack with low testosterone in men and women than from, optimized and even high. It's more beneficial to your health to have super physiologic levels of testosterone than low testosterone, as far as what it does, as far as the anti-inflammatory mark and the, metabolic enhancement. So it's just crazy.
It
Yeah, I
really
feel like
is.
testosterone could replace like the laundry list of medications that people take. You'll like you were referring to, they're on statins, they're on blood pressure medication, they could be on insulin, they could be on biphosphonates, and there's so many other side effects that these can cause. But if they were taking hormones, like they probably don't need to be on half of these medications. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I had
just
a
real sad.
I had a patient that was getting prescribed from a hematologist erythropoietin to help boost her red blood cell count for like a year, and it wasn't working. And no one checked this poor woman's hormones, and the woman had like such low testosterone. I mean, her insurance I think was paying like 12 or $1,300 every 2 weeks for her to get an erythropoietin shot injection.
Wow.
And we ran labs on her. She had like the testosterone, like it was non-existent. Her testosterone was low. She had like borderline issues with her kidneys because of it, and the injection wasn't working, and she was getting it done in the office, so it wasn't an injection error. We started on hormones like, you know 2.5 months later. She goes back. She's no longer anemic. She's like, doesn't look like she's a skeleton anymore. She's like, feeling like
Wow.
$1 million, and she
That's
doesn't need the
amazing.
damn, erythropoietin injection. And I mean, this is a case where I don't want to say where it was located because the hematologist might get mad, but they're upset because now they're not getting that high visit every 2 weeks from the
Mm-hmm.
patient. So, but yeah, it's kind of criminal what ends up happening due to like a lack of awareness and a lack of appropriate use of hormones.
Yep. And Patrick, when
Absolutely.
you're prescribing HRT, do you have a preference? As we know, there's multiple forms of HRT. There's pellets, creams, injections, orals. A lot of this is patient preference, provider preference, but what's your preference and why?
I like injections. If we're talking testosterone, we do treat some people that no matter how many times we educate them, they are just needle phobic. But we do use cream in some patients. We've had some patients that didn't even want the cream and have tried like the new oral form of testosterone, and it's just not as effective.
Mm,
But I prefer injections. There's a couple different ways you can do injections. Obviously, like I prefer just a simple subcutaneous injection. And I myself personally, I microdose every single day just because I like how it makes me feel. I feel a little bit more level-headed. But yeah, there's so many different ways, and that's the beauty of injections. You can, change the dose, change the frequency of the dose. It's a lot easier
yes.
to manipulate to make it more
Mhm.
personalized and like biohack your protocol kind of a thing. Um, I'm not a big fan of pellets. I have, when I was in primary care, I did do pellets when I was doing primary care. And me personally, I don't find them very effective. It's just hard to adjust the dose and you're committed to that dose or you have to cut the patient back open. And, I don't want to upset people that do pellets. There are some providers that I know in other
Yeah.
clinics that love pellets and they can optimize their patients. Just me personally, it's very hard to dose and it's easier to screw up, harder to optimize, and it could just cause a lot of side effects.
Yeah, I'd say my favorite one is just the one that the patient will take. So
Yeah,
if they're going to be
exactly. Yeah,
compliant
Yep.
on a pellet because they
yeah,
can't remember to take the
exactly.
meds, then get on the pellet. But yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm the same
I
way.
we actually completely agree. And so Zarina and I both offer pellets in our clinics, but a lot of the people that go on pellets are just the people who are like, I'm super busy. I'm not going to do hormones if I can't
Yeah,
do this. Yeah. And also like some patients come in and that's like what they want. But at the same time, I with Zarina, whatever people are willing to take, the nice
yeah,
thing about doing injections though is the fact that you can like adjust as needed.
exactly.
Plus, I
Yeah,
think I've got so many guys on testosterone and none of them want to do pellets. And I think they also just I don't know. I think they just like injection. Like you were saying, like there's
Yeah.
instant gratification. You can do it multiple times a week.
yeah.
So
And
I
it's
get it.
easier to adjust. And I like it. It's kind of part of,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a up at 4 a.m. every day kind of a guy and I microdose. So it's like kind of become part of my like routine, like, and I kind of miss it. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
travel, even if I'm like going away on vacations, most of the time, unless I'm going away for an extended period, like I'll take it with me. But like if I go away, I kind of like miss it. I'll like do my injections like for like 4 days and I'm like, oh, it's kind of empty, because I wake up, I drink like 2 or 3 glasses of water and I'll have my nice cup of black iced coffee and I'm like, oh man, like I don't have my injection to do this morning. But yeah, no, it's kind of like a habit,
My
Yeah.
cocktail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. My testosterone cocktail. Yeah.
I want to ask a controversial question, actually. What are your thoughts on aromatase inhibitors?
I was a proponent of them many years ago when I was doing primary care and doing a little bit of hormones then. And when I first opened, there has been like a big change. I think that it's a perspective of, which is a good thing, right? I think it's great. I think that in anything in medicine, if you get stuck in your ways and you don't adapt to the newer research, if that happens, when you get to that point, you need to get out of that space. And, because then you become the problem of like
Mm-hmm.
I call them dinosaur doctors where, they're getting older and they don't want to like adapt to change, whether it's like dealing with, stupid nurse practitioners or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just like how medicine has been changing and evolving. So I don't use them anymore. And with everything that we're learning about estrogen, especially in men acting more as like a paracrine and an intracrine hormone, I have I haven't used them in a couple of years. I do have some patients that were with me since the day I opened in 2020, and they're like, "Wait, what do you mean I don't need an estrogen blocker anymore?" And I'm like, "Listen, like it's just not indicated anymore." So us men, we're very simple creatures where if we're find a therapy that works, it's very hard for them to change. And I still to this day have patients that like fight me on it until I tell them like, listen, if you want to take something that's going to defeat the purpose of you being on hormones, that's fine. But it really is a paradigm shift. So yeah, I am completely against them for men on testosterone replacement therapy because of what we know.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So
Yeah, there was a study also. I guess it's sort of similar to the WHI study of sorts, where people got this stigma that, oh, we need to be using AIs because it's harmful for men. But it's turned out that there's estradiol in men as well, and that testosterone actually converts or metabolizes, aromatizes into estradiol. And that's where you get all the benefits of testosterone as well. So,
yeah,
like you said, yeah, if you're blocking the estradiol, because like usually it's bodybuilders too, or people that want a certain physique, they
yeah,
ask for this to have more testosterone, but you are negating all the benefits
yeah.
of the, testosterone, the cardioprotective, insulin resistance, etc. So
And that, we have a lot of our patients that, because I was big in the bodybuilding scene when I was younger, when I was in my early 20, like, 18, 19, 20, when I stopped boxing, I go to the, I have a gym membership, although I work out mostly at home because it's more efficient. But, I was big in the bodybuilding scene, and, there is a difference between doing hormones in a bodybuilding regimen. A lot of the times they're doing it for a lot of the wrong reasons, but there's a lot of our patients were, how can I say this, about that life, and then realize that, hey, it's kind of not for my good for my long-term health to be, blasting, underground testosterone. I call it bathtub water, because they get it from their buddies at the gym, and they're doing it for all the wrong reasons. But yeah, there is a stigma where most of these patients are on things besides just testosterone. When they're doing it, they're on a lot of other things like primobolan and a lot of other illicit substances. And in that demographic, of course, they are told estrogen bad, testosterone good. I must take 1,000 milligrams of
Yep.
testosterone a week, and if I get a little chubby, it's because I have too much estrogen. It's not that you're eating 7,000 calories a day and not exercising intensely. So it's a different demographic, but yeah.
And just to rewind back, for those of you that are listening, aromatase inhibitors, these are meds that block aromatase. That's the enzyme that converts testosterone into estrogen. So it's used to lower estrogen levels in the body. Like a really common one is anastrozole. It actually is used like for breast cancer treatments for that exact reason,
Yeah.
because it helps estrogen like feed the tumors. So in this situation, what we're referencing is the fact that it used to be that people would take aromatase inhibitors to lower estrogen while they would do it always in conjunction with testosterone therapy,
Yeah.
and that mindset, there's been a shift, and this is no longer a thing. It's so funny,
Yeah.
Patrick, because you probably remember when I sent you a message, because I had a young kid that was really persistent, like came to me specifically for that, to the point where I was like, let me just reach out to a colleague that does this all day and just make sure I'm not
Yeah.
going crazy. And you reiterated sort of what my mindset was, but it is very interesting that
Yeah. It's, because,
everything has shifted.
what we're finding now is that, the benefits of testosterone and hormones, like it's at the tissue level. So, the way the aromatase inhibitors do, they're going to block the conversion, but, when you do that, you're actually blocking where estrogen has its most effects, as far as inside the tissue, inside the bones. So yeah, when you block that conversion, you're basically negating a lot of the benefits. And I mean, I can attest to it. I've never had them take an AI ever, even before like the paradigm shift. But I've never, the biggest thing that people worry about is, oh my God, if I don't block my estrogen, I'm gonna, get gyno or man boobs, which is, from in Hollywood and stuff, from the old school movies back in the '90s and early 2000s. Like it's not what happens with a proper protocol of testosterone replacement therapy.
Right. And I find that patients tend to realize like, oh, why am I crying more? I'm more emotional or something. I feel like it's just a placebo effect, because
Yeah,
when you're on hormones, you kind of lock in more to your what's happening, and you want to correlate that with what you're taking, with what's new. I just find that it's a placebo effect in case men are worried, like, I don't want my estrogen too high. I don't want to be a girl.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. It's men, how can I say this without offending a lot of men that might be listening or watching? If that is the case, if having a little bit higher estrogen levels makes you more in tune with your emotions, that's kind of part of living. You know what I mean? Do you want to be just like a shell where you're not, like some guys like, oh my God, I was watching a movie with my wife and I started crying. I'm like, okay, well, like, when's the last time you cried then before that? Like, what I mean? Is that such a bad thing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to be, like, I don't know, but it's a placebo effect. Kind of similar to what happens, in other areas of medicine where, you take a medication, you get prescribed like an antidepressant, and, you start to feel better and you associate
Mm-hmm.
that antidepressant is working, and then you never question it again. Like, oh my God, it's got to be the Zoloft because I started taking it 6 weeks ago and I feel so much better. But you don't take into account that maybe you are doing things besides that, and after that placebo effect wears off, it's like nothing. And it's the same thing with like, your hormones. Like, there's always going to be an adjustment period where your hormones fluctuate. It's not like you start something, or you start taking testosterone and now your estrogen is never going to your estrogen and testosterone are never going to
Mm-hmm.
regulate itself. It's one of those things where it's static. It's never just staying the same. It's moving around at all times.
Absolutely. And I wanted to clarify for people that are new to HRT and they're thinking like, why do men need estrogen? Why do women need testosterone? Like women do have a fair amount of testosterone in our bodies. Same with men. They have a fair amount of estrogen as well. So that's why we do what we do to help optimize all of these. You have to optimize everything for it to work together. But I
Absolutely.
wanted to switch gears. We've been talking about men. Let's talk about women. What kind of therapies do you provide to women?
Yeah, I mean, progesterone, hormones such as like progesterone, testosterone, estrogen. You said it perfectly. I mean, the old school way of thinking, or the way of thinking still, is that, oh, estrogen is a female hormone. But when you look at the lab ranges and you calculate the actual units of measurement, women actually have more progesterone and testosterone compared to estrogen, right? So like, that was the thing that everyone's weird. Oh, if my estrogen is low, so that's why I have no libido, or my, that's why I'm like, have like vaginal dryness and things like that. But testosterone and progesterone is just as important for women, especially testosterone. Women do make a lot of testosterone, and men, like the ranges on the labs, which are completely non-standardized, and every lab has a different lab, and depends on if it's an ultra
Mm-hmm.
sensitive estrogen or a testosterone with a LCMS or liquid chromatography. But in general, you know women need testosterone, men need estrogen. It's all about like a balance. It's so, but yeah, we do, we offer like peptides for both men and women for like health optimization and overall health and longevity, hormones. We obviously have more men on hormones than women because it
Mm-hmm.
is more accepted from a patient standpoint. Like, men see the benefits. I say this jokingly, but kind of, meaningfully. Men, we are simple creatures. You give a man more energy and motivation, a libido, and a more firm erection, and you are going to have a happy customer. Where women,
Yep.
you guys traditionally are much more in tune with your body, which is a good thing, because I tell this to everyone, is that if men were in charge of having babies and carrying our species, and being responsible for populating the earth, we would have died probably 10 to 15 years after we came alive as a species. We're just, we're very simple creatures. So, but in general, there is a stigma that is, or there is a tide that's changing. It's becoming a lot more accepted by patients now. I think, like we talked about, that study is, people are realizing that that was not an appropriate study, and the recommendations and guidelines are, need to change. So there is a big tide and change coming. So women are coming around, but yeah, our population, as far as people on hormones, is still probably about 70-30 men to women. But we have, probably the last couple of months, there's been an equal number of women starting hormones, because it's becoming more accepted, more accepted by patients.
And just out of curiosity, do your women go on peptides too? I know that like historically it seems like the peptides are always like for the boys, but do you find that you're ordering that for your ladies as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of peptides that entice women. Like, we have like the copper peptide, or from like a research peptide website, which we don't do, obviously. But a lot, it's becoming very popular. It's called like the glow peptide, which it helps like the skin, hair, and nails. which is the copper tripeptide with a combination of pentadecaarginate or BPC, TB500. So these are all things that women really like, and even the growth hormone releasing peptides or ghrelin agonist peptides. So yeah, women like it, especially women that are trying to optimize their health and really doing strength training or very active people. We have a lot of women that like run half marathons, or people that are into like CrossFit or even like hot yoga, which I actually do with my wife a few times a week, like
Love
100.
that.
Yeah, hot yoga or hot Pilates and stuff. So women are
Nice.
realizing the benefits of it as well. Traditionally these peptides were used by like, the gym bros or bros in the gym or people with like injuries that are trying to heal. But women are coming around as well because they're fantastic as far as the anti-inflammatory effect and the ability to heal yourself. And a lot of women like our peptides because we help reverse and treat a lot of like autoimmune issues, which unfortunately is more common in women than men due to the lower androgen load, lower testosterone level in women compared to men. So they unfortunately have a higher level of like autoimmune issues like Hashimoto's disease and rheumatoid arthritis and things like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of our peptides really help heal and reverse a lot of these conditions.
And to clarify, peptides are like amino acids, right? Or almost like
Yep.
proteins?
Yep. So, peptides, and they've been used for decades. I think even insurance-based dermatologists and rheumatologists, use some of these peptides. They're just not the traditional one, the same ones that we're talking about. But yeah, peptides are essentially chains of amino acids, and they are natural in our body. What they are doing is just being manipulated and being able to use in either an injection form, a cream, or an oral form. So, it's completely natural. It is not introducing a foreign substance that's not known to your body like a pharmaceutical. It's, what we all make naturally. And unfortunately, as we become seasoned, these peptides, these small chains of amino acids, they get broken down due to just aging and life in general. So yeah, they're completely natural to our body, and a lot of them come from like the healing proponents of our body, whether it's the thymus gland or the gastric juice. So yeah, they're completely safe.
I was gonna say I did I did a round just for literally like because I hate giving things to my patients that I haven't tried before. So I did a round of testosterone and I was like shocked and shooked at how incredibly amazing the effects were. I was kind of originally a little skeptical because I'm somebody who feels really well, I'm really active, I have a lot of energy. So it's like, I don't need this. You guys, it's crazy. Even my
Yeah.
stretch marks started to disappear because it helps with collagen production. The scale, like the pounds just kept dropping over those several weeks that I did it. And I was like, wait a minute, why are my guys the only ones who are on peptides? I think that we're not, none of us are framing this well enough for women that they know that like they can have huge benefit and feel amazing, but also can really help with sort of those of you that were on GLP-1s, this like post GLP-1 era that so many of you are in, where you find that you don't necessarily have sort of the body that you want, even though you've lost the weight.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I mean, we piggyback a lot of these peptides like testosterone and like IGF-1 LR3, hexavalent. Like we have a lot of men and women on, either that are on currently GLP-1s or were on it. And I mean, as far as the body recomposition, it is fantastic what it does. I mean, I use them all the time. I'm on, a few myself right now. I always joke around and say that, I'm the same as you. I don't like to try anything, even if it's something that I technically don't need until like, to offer to my patients until I try it myself. And it's like fantastic what it does as far as helping you sleep and tighten up
Oh
the
my God,
skin.
the sleep
Yeah.
is amazing.
hmm Yeah. I
It's
love me some
crazy. I
pep.
feel like it's just such a game changer. You start to think to yourself, why is it that like we've been giving like GLP-1s all this attention when these peptides do so many, they literally can help you do your own level of body recomposition. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
They
We have a
can
lot
really
of people that
target
can.
like your abdominal fat. It's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. The visceral fat, the abdominal fat. We have patients
Mm-hmm.
that you go to their doctor and they have like lower back pain and nothing's working, and like they're just like not happy with the way they feel and look, and they're told, oh yeah, we can give you like pain medicine, this and that, and You give them a little, a course of a couple months of, a couple stacks of these peptides at a fraction of the cost what it would cost for you to pay out of pocket for like a anti-rheumatic drug if you have like an autoimmune condition. And I mean, it is pretty crazy what it does. I mean, it's, a shame because there is a lot of scrutiny with peptides.
Yeah.
But,
And a lot of stigma.
Yeah, and I have a coworker. She has rheumatoid arthritis, and it's so sad. She's like already probably 70, I'm assuming, and she's still working because she can't pay for these anti-rheumatoid arthritis medications on her own. So insurance is covering it. These meds are so expensive; they're like thousands of dollars a month.
yep.
But imagine if you're on hormone replacement therapy or peptides, and it could just completely change the game and help you out, and it's a lot more affordable. So
The sad part is that there's actually studies showing the benefit of these peptides for, the osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. Back in the day, there was a study where patients were put on Samoralin, one of the peptides, compared to, I don't know if it was Humira or one of the anti-rheumatic drugs, and they did an MRI before, during, and after treatment, and they actually took MRIs of these patients' hands, and the nodules got significantly smaller with courses of Samoralin versus the one of these anti-rheumatic drugs. And
wow.
of course,
That's
insurance
crazy.
doesn't cover it. Didn't cover it, but there's studies supporting its uses. Over in Europe and other countries, they've been using
Mhm.
peptides for decades. And it's just mark my words, these peptides, one of the reasons why there was scrutiny on them, starting about a year and a half ago, was because of its effectiveness. A lot of times there was a patient say, oh, I was told that these peptides aren't safe. I've had more side effects myself, and my patients, I could attest that they've had more side effects from taking an aspirin or a Tylenol or over-the-counter supplement than peptides. But big pharma is eventually going to get their hands on these. That is why there's
Yep.
scrutiny. It has nothing to do with the safety. I
Yep.
would say within probably 5 to 10 years, you're going to be going to your rheumatologist with these conditions, and they're going to order you vials of either testosterone, Samoralin, hexarelin, IGF-1. And instead of going to a clinic like ours where you can get them at a fraction of the cost, they're going to order it like CVS or Walgreens or maybe a specialty pharmacy, and your insurance is going to be charged like $3,000 for a vial that would cost
Yep.
you like
Hmm.
$200 or whatever,
Yeah.
if you went to a clinic like ours. So that's a whole another topic where the the greed and money in medicine is really where the issue and the problem is. But I am excited that they still are available, the peptides. I'm hoping that all of the peptides that used to be available up, about 2 years ago, come back soon. Um, but until then, there's plenty of other peptides that we offer and other options. So
Totally agree with your little conspiracy theory that big pharma doesn't want doesn't want the world to know, because
yeah,
I'm telling you guys that are listening, if you have not tried peptides, it literally, to me, it was like as close to a magic wand as you can think, just because I didn't have any like
yeah,
negative side effects. Maybe some people do, but I can't tell you like one negative thing other than the fact that you have to inject it, you know what I mean, if you don't like injecting or if you have sensitive skin. But I'm telling you, like, if the world tried peptides and they were aware of it, I feel like everybody would be obsessed.
Now, I'm piggybacking off of what you were saying, Patrick, with big pharma. It's so true. Like they can't monetize off of hormone replacement therapy because it's just natural testosterone, progesterone. Like, unfortunately, it's not something that they can make money off of. So that's why if people are afraid, like, well, this is not FDA approved, like you have to look at the
yeah,
reason why. It's because it's something that they can't make money off of. So they don't want to
yeah.
approve it, of course.
Yeah,
So
exactly. The whole approval, the way that meds and treatments get approved, there's a whole process that, I'm not going to pretend that I have all the insights on it, but it's basically, you have to jump through hoops to get something FDA approved. And even though something is effective and is working, if there's not a vested interest, and when I say vested interest, I mean money behind it or a way for someone to make, large amounts of money off of it, it's very hard for it to get approved. So that's really where it all comes down to.
Yeah, and these reps are going to dinner with these doctors, and especially if they're trying to push their product and they're like, hey, we can give you an incentive or something. Or even if you're at the hospital, like there's best practices alert. Like when you have a patient that has, say, high cholesterol or something, and you don't give them a statin, it's going to be like, wait, why aren't you doing this? It'll
Yep.
kind of punish you in a sense if you don't give them a statin. So just in case you're wondering, like, why are people still on these medications? There's different incentives and different policies that unfortunately like traditional medicine providers have to follow.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because now technically the rep can't go in. And I remember back in the day when it still would happen where the rep would go into the office and basically give the providers in the office a check, or there'd be some type of financial incentive. But now they kind of hide it, where instead of them going and giving them a check for $5,000, it's, oh, how about I take you and your whole office out to dinner. And then at the dinner they're having the, oh, now that it's in an unofficial place, I want you to speak at this big symposium, and I can't pay you to promote my product, but I can pay you to give a talk to 1,000 other doctors. And it's not to
Mm-hmm.
promote the product, but it's to talk about this condition. And the speaking
Yep.
engagement is going to be a $10,000 speaking engagement, not to promote my statin or my drug or my antidepressant. But if you do agree to do this speech, I'm paying you for your time. And then you get like an algorithm and an outline of what you have to talk about. And of course, the medication is,
It's about that. Yep.
in
Mm-hmm.
there. So it's still happening. It's
Crazy.
just they're a little bit more creative and manipulative as where they're getting the money from or what they're paying the money for.
So, Patrick, if someone wants to get into biohacking, where do you recommend to start? Like what is biohacking?
Yeah, so it's kind of a term that people use, right? The term basically is referencing to hacking or manipulating your own biology. Um, I'm a big proponent. There's a bunch of big prominent biohackers. Dave Asprey is like, I think he calls
Mm-hmm.
himself the godfather or the father of biohacking.
Yeah, he says he
There's
created it.
people that
Yep.
have been doing it longer. I like Dave Asprey a lot. What he stands for. Some people don't like him. He rubs them the wrong way. He comes off as being like a salesman, salesy kind of. I've been to a few of his biohacking conferences. So I do like people. He's got a few books that are actually really great. I've read all of them. And they do go over a lot of the basics of biohacking and what it is. I also like a gentleman named Ben Greenfield. He's got a podcast as well, and he's like a personal trainer, strength coach for like very high end, like professional athletes. And he also, I think now is partnering with, I think it's called 10X Health, which is like a whole platform of a lot of people with money that are getting into the wellness space as well. But he's also someone that's very smart, very bright, got into was doing pre-med and probably could have passed med school and been a physician with flying colors. But he's very science-based and goes over a lot of these biohacking protocols. Um, you know, those two I do recommend for most people. And the reason why is Ben Greenfield in particular, he gives like tips in his on a lot of his books and his podcasts about like practical stuff. There is a guy named Brian Johnson who is a little extreme.
Yeah,
He
he
does a
is.
little crazy stuff. Some of the stuff, I could never advocate as a licensed clinician, but
Yeah.
he also spends a lot of money. That's the thing with biohacking, is that people feel like it's just people selling supplements or affiliate discount codes. And if you have the money to do the things that some of these people say, it's like, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to optimize your health, which is always great. You're always going to get a great return on investment. But Brian Johnson's a little crazy, where I think he spends like over $1 million a year enhancing and biohacking his genetics. Like he's got like a chronological or a biological age of like 20 years younger than his chronological age, which is crazy. But he does some crazy things like, in plasmapheresis, he takes his son's plasma and injects it into
Mm-hmm.
himself. Then he
Yeah.
takes his
Was
blood
there
and
a Netflix
injects it into his.
special about him?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
And he
He's
has
a
a whole
little,
movement.
he's
It's called like the Don't Die movement or whatever.
Ah,
So he's
yes,
got
yes.
yeah,
he's very and he even now I think like has like these conferences that involve like daytime raves where they all are into
yeah,
being healthy. So
yeah, yeah.
he's really into it. And I think you're right. People do think that you have to spend a lot of money, but the truth is a lot of biohacking doesn't cost any money at all.
Yeah, no, honestly, It's super simple. Most of the stuff, like
Hmm.
I I tell patients, it's similar to like hormones and like services we offer, right? I always want to offer what is going to move the needle the most. It's like if you are 300 pounds and you want to lose, 100 pounds or 150 pounds, but you can only do a few things, I'm not going to tell you to get out in the sunlight. Like I'm not gonna say, all right, go out in the sun and that's gonna help you lose weight. Like, no, like you need to like exercise, you need to like, really do, factor into what you're eating, how you're eating, when you're eating, and just get regular movement into your life. So it's all about like the person in front of you. But a lot of these things are free. Like a big one that everyone does, and I have a cold plunge myself, but like it's like cold therapy or thermogenesis. Like I have a very fancy cold plunge. It's got ozone in it. I use it every, at least 3 to 4 days a week. It goes down to 39 degrees.
Oh,
It's
wow.
self-cleaning, but you don't need that. Like before I bought my cold plunge, it was a pain in the ass, but I would literally fill up my bathtub with buckets of ice and I would carry it up the stairs. And I just was like, you know what? It's worth the investment because I was sick of doing this for 30 minutes a day. Me and my wife would carry up buckets of ice and then we would spend more time getting the bath cold
Yep.
enough where it was beneficial than actually sitting in it, especially during the summer months. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to buy a cold plunge. And I got the one, I have no affiliation with them, but I got the one that was on Shark Tank. It's literally called the Plunge. And it's like, it was like $6,000 or $7,000 at the time. It's got ozone in it. It's like the one that could keep it so it doesn't freeze during the winter because it's in my 3 season family room. So yeah, I mean, that and infrared sauna, if you have access to a gym that has it, all it takes is, an hour a week total of really hot therapy if it's infrared or a regular steam room. And there's data showing that all you have to do is a total of like 11 minutes of cold therapy
Mhm.
a week. So, you could split it up, a couple minutes a day or just do one cold, session a week, 11 minutes at a time, which depending on how cold you're getting, it's kind of hard. 3 minutes at a time isn't bad, but you know,
Yeah.
it's those are things that are simple. And then there's obviously the red light. There's infrared devices you can buy, which I have a bunch at my house. My house is like a little biohacking studio, but it's also something that I use.
Yeah, I think Sephora even has like a little mask you can get.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask, what are the benefits of all these, the cold plunge and the infrared sauna?
So I like cold therapy, and there is a lot of studies coming out, and people saying that it might not be as good as people are as we are touting it to be. But I mean, the benefits of cold therapy are pretty remarkable as far as enhancing and improving your metabolism. And they have studies of like people's brains being hooked up to an MRI that actually will increase the dopamine level and help with focus. And also, traditionally cold therapy really was only used by athletes for like recovery, like either endurance athletes or like professional basketball players and football players. They would go into a cold plunge after a match, after either a football game or a basketball game, and it helps with like swelling and inflammation locally to the area. Like Russell Westbrook is a professional basketball player that, recently that he's been known, he goes and does like cupping and cold therapy after like almost every game. He'll go into like an ice bath in the locker room. But it really does have metabolic enhancements. So it actually will speed up your metabolic rate. And the woo, or what people, in the biohacking field, what we say is that when you do what's called thermoregulation, where you go from very cold to normal to like very hot temperatures, what it does is it's basically adapting and adjusting your metabolism, and it's adjusting your metabolic rate. So there is a lot of benefits. And like heat therapy, like I have an infrared sauna in my house, not a very fancy one. It was like $2,000 or $3,000. It goes to 100 and whatever 65 degrees Celsius is. I don't know it's like 140 degrees, I think. But you do that for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. And I mean, there are studies showing that cold or infrared sauna is actually mimics and is more beneficial than exercise. Now, I never would recommend anyone not exercising, but as far as the calories you burn, because I have an Aura ring and I actually will track it, I'll burn like 250 to 300 calories in a sauna. Um,
Wow.
so, I mean, and also I'm someone that I just don't sweat unless I'm like in a very hot temperature. So I feel like I don't like detox or clean out my body. But yeah, sauna is, beneficial, and it's, there's a whole mental part too where it helps relax the body, relaxes the mind. and I actually will do work in the sauna. It's probably not good for my
Oh,
laptop,
wow.
but supposedly it's not bad for electronics. But I'll go in there and I'll like respond to patient messages, and I've recorded a couple like videos, and like I was on a guest on a podcast like last year when I was in the sauna,
Oh my God.
naked from the waist up. But yeah,
I'm
yeah,
surprised that your equipment was still fine because when I put my phone in there, it's like, oh,
It's
I'm
like too hot.
overheated.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the infrared sauna, it doesn't go as hot as like a traditional like
Ah,
steam one, so that's the issue. They
got
say
it.
it's good for it, but full disclaimer, this is another laptop that I'm on right now because the one that I used last year did break. Now, I don't know if it was from the sauna or not, but I do know that my Aura Ring, I don't take my Aura Ring in because it tells you not to go above, I think, 125 degrees Fahrenheit
Mhm.
on like the Aura. Like I have an Aura Ring at our
Yeah.
clinic. We do like, the Stello CGM device, which I usually wear one, but I forgot to put a new one on before the
Hmm.
podcast. I wear it for like 14 days at a time just to see,
Hmm.
what food's spiking my blood sugar and stuff. But now a lot of these wearables, they all coordinate and they adapt to each other. So like I could literally see my blood sugar on my Aura app, and it'll tell me what it is, and then you can kind of say like, hey, maybe I need to walk for 10 minutes, to lower my blood sugar, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent, and I think Katie is too, of the Aura Ring because it tells you like your stress, your sleep. And I was amazed. Like last weekend, it was pretty social activities with like my family, and then the next day I hang out with friends. But like it was actually registering as stress, which is really interesting because you think that like, well, I'm having fun, but yet your body's like, well, you're stressed out, even if it's good stress. So it's just
Yeah.
good to monitor those things.
Yeah, the same thing. I
Um,
was hanging out with my kids at like a play, there was like a local concert, and everyone was having fun. I was, me and my wife, we don't drink, but everyone else was, like people who have kids around the same age as ours that we hang out with. Everyone was like relaxing. Our kids were dancing, and like my Aura Ring picked up that I was like engaged and in stress. I'm like, this is nothing. Like this isn't stress. Like, but yeah, so it's not 100% accurate, but it is crazy what it does for like heart rate
Sometimes it's spot
variability.
on though. Sometimes I'm
Yeah.
I'm stressed on the inside, and it's like
yeah.
you're
Yep.
stressed. I'm like, how did you know? I literally haven't told anybody. So it's pretty
Yeah,
impressive.
and for ladies that are still getting their periods and stuff, it's very accurate as far as telling women when they're ovulating, when their periods
Mhm.
do. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, it's kind of scary what they're going to do. They're going to replace humans altogether. I think technology and wearables, but yeah,
Mm.
Yeah, I like it personally for cycle tracking as well. Like it can actually definitely give you a range of when you're going to get your period. And I think it's cool knowing when you're in your luteal phase, when you're in your follicular phase, because
yeah,
it does explain some of the changes that happen in your body and like why you respond, why you're more irritable, because you're probably in your luteal phase. So I think it's very, very cool. And if you have HSA or FSA account, like you can get it
yep,
reimbursed, get the Aura Ring. Because I know the price can be a little bit intimidating, but it can be reimbursed with insurance as
yeah,
well.
Totally worth it. One
Mhm.
thing I just wanted to add, because we were just talking about the biohacking, is my sister recently was on the phone with her, and she was like, well, why would I go to somebody to talk to them about biohacking when I can just like look it up on ChatGPT or just like watch one of Dave Asprey's Instagrams? And what I was explaining to her is that it was a very legitimate question when you really think about it. But what I was explaining to her is that the benefit of going somewhere like Stracuzzi Wellness or at LifeFire, we do it too, is that what we're able to do is treat all of your metabolic health issues because we're able to address like hormones and then see, okay, maybe you're trying to lose weight and you have some insulin resistance. So now the CGM monitor that you have, we can look at your glucose levels and we can give you like a customized plan to help you be healthy overall. So to look at the big picture. So
yeah,
I think that it is really, really beneficial. Of course, you can do biohacking yourself, but if you have sort of larger health goals, it really is helpful to go to somebody who kind of understands all of those moving parts.
yeah. I agree. It's like one of those things where that like what we're trying to do, what we do with like biohacking, is really what like a primary care clinician should have been, right? Like, because like I have patients that say, I haven't been to my primary in years because they don't do anything for me. I just go see my endocrinologist if I have, issues with my
Mm.
thyroid, or I go see my cardiologist if I have really uncontrolled high blood pressure. Like, most people think that primary care like doesn't do anything. I feel like where primary care should be and how it should shine is I should help tie it all together for that patient in front of them. And that's kind of where like a facility like yours or like what we do at our clinic is like, instead of doing chat gpt or watching a biohacker online. And I'm not saying that they're not knowledgeable. There's some that are very, very knowledgeable. Like like they're
Mm-hmm.
very knowledgeable, and I look for them for advice as far as other things that are kind of up in the field too. But that person that you're seeing on, whether it's social media or YouTube, if they don't have a vested interest in you, it's like, to ask them for a non, to just go off of their non-personalized advice. It's kind of like seeing an ad for, on TV and saying, "Oh, I want that drug because I saw an ad." It's just kind of one of those things where if you don't have someone in your corner, the right person in your corner, it's not really a way that I would recommend doing it. And also, there's so many different devices out there. Like, how do you find one you trust? It's just very confusing. There's so many different red light devices. There's so many different, wearables you can do. So, there's the Dexcom, there's the Stelo device for CGM. So it's just, finding someone that can keep you level headed and on a path is really beneficial.
Right. And I feel like ChatGPT doesn't know you as a person. So you might have other conditions, or, for example, like Katie's sister, she's postpartum. Like, there might be certain conditions that you have, or things that you can't do right now. So I think ChatGPT just takes a general sense of what the internet's saying, et cetera. And that's another thing too. Sometimes the internet isn't always correct. There's information that we know, as like, for example, with the AIs, like how I'd asked you, there's also articles that you could find that are for AIs too. So I think it's good to have a provider that will use their critical thinking skills and figure out who you are and see if it's beneficial for your situation.
And
especially when it comes to finances, because it's all of it can get super expensive, right? But if you were to come to a provider who knows you and who has your best interest at heart, and you're trying to weigh what you're going to spend, like maybe you're trying to decide whether or not you want to buy a cold plunge or whether or not you want to buy HRT, right? Maybe the compromise is you do HRT and you just take really, really cold showers every morning because that's what you can afford right now. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's something that only a human can do. And that's the benefit of having a medical provider who kind of is into sort of having like protocols where they can really like move all those moving pieces together.
Absolutely.
So what's next for Stracuzzi Wellness? Any exciting plans or new services?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of trying to do a million different things at once, but right now there's me and then 4 other providers. We're treating in like 35 states. We're bringing on another provider, another male provider who's very knowledgeable in hormones and has a lot of experience in like cardiology and primary care, and he's into like the same things that we are, as far as like, biohacking and optimizing metabolism. He's very into like personal training and stuff like that too. So he's very like healthy and trying to, optimize his health. And then, for me, we're trying to get like a bigger, nicer space locally where we're at over in upstate New York, and then another spot about 30 to 45 minutes away from where we are. And then we're going to open another location probably in like Sarasota, Florida. But yeah, that's kind of like the next step. I always tell people I like to look at like a 1, 3, 6, and like 1 to 2 year mark, like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and like 1 to 2 year mark down the line. But my goal or my vision is to get the practice more locations, not necessarily to bring in more patients, but to have like a more readily available place for people that want to come in person, and get the in-person care, although most patients prefer telemedicine, as you guys probably know. But yeah, and then we're also in the process of rebranding. So the clinic is called Stracuzzi Wellness, but Improve You Today is kind of our logo, and we are in the process. It's a long headache, but we are just basically going to be rebranding it. Instead of Stracuzzi Wellness, it's just going to be Improve You Today Wellness. So there's a whole logistic of like changing the website and all the stuff that comes along and the paperwork. But yeah, because it's not just me doing everything, or I'm the only provider anymore. So I did want to make it more representative of the other clinicians that work with me, not for me, but with me. So yeah, that's kind of like what's the immediate is just like the rebranding, and obviously keeping the engagement and like the awareness online and locally, because then when you rebrand, it might, you might lose a little steam, kind of a thing.
I feel like Zarina and I almost did. You're too humble to say it, so I'm going to say it. He has thousands of patients, you guys. His clinic is it's like he started it and it just seems that it like took off, and it's for a reason. It's because they're giving really, really amazing care. So he is definitely, Stracuzzi Wellness is a force to be reckoned with, and they're definitely somewhere that you would want to go for wellness, and they're in tons and tons of states. Whenever I have patients that call me that don't have, that aren't located in my area, I always say like, hey, like, you definitely want to check out Patrick's practice because, like I said, they have that many clients for a reason. He's obviously making a lot of people happy and well.
Yeah, I mean, I never want to be known as like a very, very, very high volume clinic, but we have a lot of patients. We have over like 10,000 active patients. That currently being treated, and we have over like 20,000 or 25,000 people that have been treated at our clinic. In our EMR,
Wow.
and the whole goal is just to help as many people as we can. Anyone that's trying to make their long-term health a priority.
Building that empire. I love it.
Yeah, something like that.
Where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, so the Instagram handle name is Stracuzzi Wellness. The Facebook page is Stracuzzi Wellness. I believe our TikTok, which is relatively new, is Improve You Today. But even on like social media and Facebook, it'll say Stracuzzi Wellness, and like in the description, it'll be Improve You Today. And the website is, we actually have two different domains. It's stracuzzywellness.com or improveyoutaday.com. So it's just a process using the clinic, the marketing clinic that we work with, agency that we work with. They're kind of rebranding everything for us and getting us switched up and open.
Awesome.
So definitely follow him online, guys. Like
Yes.
I said before, he's somebody who, like, Zarina and I definitely admire.
Look up to.
We literally look up to you, and we watch your videos when we want information. You see,
Yeah.
I even reached out to you when I had a question about a more complicated patient. So I definitely highly recommend following him if you want to sort of learn more about biohacking or HRT or wellness in general.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, any patients that are, interested in reaching out, please, feel free to, go to our website, book a free call, give our clinic a call. The whole goal is to help as many people as we can, and other clinicians as well. We do mentor other providers as well. So yeah.
Love that.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, go to his website because he said he serves 35 states, but you are based in New York, right? Upstate
Yep.
New York.
Yeah, our office location's in New York. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. This was such a treat, and we were
Yes,
so
it was
excited
lovely.
to do this.
Absolutely. Thank you. My pleasure.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe to our podcast, give us a rating, and share with your family and friends who might find it helpful.
And remember, we love hearing from our listeners. Connect with us on our social media channels or shoot us an email with your thoughts, questions, or suggestions for future topics. Don't forget to check out our website, www.thewayinNPs.com, and to follow us on Instagram at thewayinNPs.
If you need one-on-one help with your weight loss or wellness journey, book a private consultation with us. The A-List Clinic can be reached at www.thealistclinic.com or on Instagram and TikTok at the A-List Clinic.
And my clinic, Lifefire Weight and Wellness, can be reached at www.lifefireweight.com or on Instagram and TikTok at lifefireweight.
Thanks again for tuning into the Wayne Podcast with your hosts, Katie and Zarina. Until next time, take care and be well.
The information in this podcast is for general information only. It is not intended as medical advice and should not be relied upon as a substitute for medical consultation with a qualified medical provider familiar with your medical needs.